Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. Hey, my name is Rosine, and I'm 23 years old. When people look at me, they see a young woman who has her life in order. They see long black hair that falls neatly over my shoulders, a quiet smile that doesn't give too much away, and eyes that most people say are soft, gentle, trustworthy. They see someone they think is calm, composed, maybe even happy. But the truth is, appearances lie. What they don't see are the nights I've cried myself to sleep. The mornings I've stared at my reflection, wondering if I even recognized the person looking back, or the secrets I've been carrying that feel heavier than anything I thought I could survive. Sometimes I wonder when it all began, when my life stopped being simple and started being this endless maze of choices I didn't want to make. Maybe it was when my parents' marriage crumbled. I was young, too young to understand why everything suddenly felt like it was shifting under my feet. One day my house was full of voices, arguments, laughter, the everyday chaos of family life. And the next, silence. My mom and dad decided they couldn't do it anymore. The love they once had faded into bitterness. And I found myself split between two worlds, never fully belonging in either one. I moved around a lot after that. Different houses, different apartments, different temporary beds that never really felt like mine. My mom tried her best, I think, but she was drowning in her own pain. Sometimes she'd smile at me, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. Sometimes she'd say everything was going to be okay, but her eyes gave away the truth. She was tired. She was broken. And I guess, in her own way, she didn't have enough left to hold me together when she couldn't even hold herself. That's how I ended up with my uncle. Not my blood uncle, but the man who had been part of the family since marrying my aunt years ago, when everything else was falling apart. He was the one who stepped forward and said I could stay with him while I finished school. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. It's just a place to breathe, to get through my classes without worrying about where I'd be sleeping the next week. But temporary has a way of stretching itself out when life keeps handing you broken pieces. His house was quiet, not cold, but quiet. He lived alone after his marriage had ended, and there was this atmosphere. Like the walls themselves carried the weight of everything unsaid. I didn't understand it right away, but he had his own story of betrayal and loss. My aunt, his wife, had cheated on him, and when he found out, something inside him shifted permanently. They tried to hold on for a while, but eventually the marriage collapsed. He was left in that house with memories that stung more than they comforted. When I moved in, he didn't treat me like a burden. He gave me space, respect, and kindness. He asked if I needed anything, offered help with schoolwork, made sure I ate dinner even on nights when I wanted to disappear into my room. At first I thought it was just obligation, him doing what was expected of family. But as time passed, I started noticing something else in him. A quiet sadness, one that mirrored my own. It wasn't obvious, but I could see it in the way he sometimes stared at his coffee too long. Or the way his shoulders slumped when he thought no one was watching. That sadness became something I recognized. It's because I carried it too. You see, love had never been kind to me. I've been in love 3 times at least what I thought was love at the time. Each one of those relationships left scars that still ache when I think about them. The first was Jason. We met in college in a chemistry class that I honestly hated. But he made it bearable. He had this goofy smile, this way of making even the most boring things feel exciting. For a while, I thought he was everything I wanted. We'd walk across campus holding hands, eat late-night pizza while laughing about nothing. And I really believed we had something real. Until I found out he was sleeping with my roommate. I can still remember the night I discovered it. I walked into our dorm room earlier than expected, and the way they both froze was enough. The girl who had helped me pick outfits before dates, the one who'd listened to me talk about how much I liked him, she had been the one he chose behind my back. The betrayal stung so deep I could barely breathe. But you know what the worst part was? I forgave him. I told myself love was worth fighting for, that mistakes could be fixed. Looking back, I realize how naive I was, how desperate I was to hold on to something that was already broken. The second time was Marcus. He was older, more mature, with a steady job that made me feel like maybe I'd finally found someone dependable. He cared about my dreams, or at least he made it seem that way. For a few months, I let myself believe again. I let myself hope. But one weekend, after spending 2 days at his place, I woke up and he was gone. His phone was off, his social media wiped. No explanation, no closure, just emptiness. It was like I had never even existed to him. That kind of abandonment doesn't just hurt, it breaks something inside you. And then there was Nathan, smooth, charming, the kind of guy who could make you believe in forever with just a smile. He told me he wanted to marry me, that he could see a future with me. He painted pictures of vacations, children, a home we'd share. I fell for it all. I fell hard. And then when I finally gave him everything, he vanished, just like the others. But this time, it didn't just hurt. It shattered me. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring. At the cold tiles, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. It was empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out every piece of hope I had left. And in that hollow space, I made a promise to myself. No more. No more men. More trust. No more giving pieces of myself to people who only knew how to break them. But here's the cruel thing about loneliness. It doesn't care about promises. You can swear yourself to walls and silence, but when the nights get long and the world feels cold, the ache doesn't go away. It lingers. It grows. And eventually, it finds ways to break through no matter how strong you think you are. Some nights, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like there was this endless hole inside me that I didn't know how to fill. My mind would tell me I didn't need anyone, but my body remembered. My heart remembered. I longed for touch, for comfort, for warmth, for someone who would just see me. Not as a burden, not as a passing distraction, but as someone worth staying for. That's when my uncle started to notice. Not in a way that felt alarming at first. It was subtle. He'd linger a little longer when asking if I was okay. He'd notice when I skipped meals, when I looked tired, when I had that distant look in my eyes. One night after dinner, he sat across from me at the table, his face lined with exhaustion, and said, "You're not okay, are you?" It startled me. No one had asked me that in years, not and meant it. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him everything, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, the nights spent numb. But all that came out was, "I'm fine." He didn't push. He just looked at me with those sad eyes and said softly, "I know what it's like to pretend." Sentence burrowed into me and stayed. Because he was pretending to. I learned more about his story in bits and pieces. How my aunt had cheated. How he found out months before their marriage ended. And how the silence between them had grown until there was nothing left. He confessed one night, almost absent-mindedly, that it had been 5 months since he'd even touched her before she left. And in that moment, I saw him not as just my uncle, but as a man who had been broken too. That's how it began. Not with some grand moment of passion, but with late-night talks. He'd knock gently on my door after the house had gone quiet. Or sometimes I'd find him sitting at the kitchen table, lost in thought, and I'd join him. At first it was harmless. We talked about life, about dreams that had slipped away, about how hard it was to keep pretending we were fine when we weren't. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Sometimes we just sat there, two broken people sharing the same silence. But then one night, the silence shifted. It was raining outside, heavy and relentless, thunder shaking the windows. He came into my room looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. He sat on the edge of my bed, rubbed his hands over his face, and whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." I asked quietly, "Do what?" He looked up at me, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name, and said, "Pretend I'm okay." Something in me broke then. Maybe because I knew exactly what he meant. Maybe because I'd been carrying the same weight. I reached for his hand without thinking, and when our fingers touched, we both froze. It felt like standing on the edge of something dangerous, knowing that one more step would change everything. From that night on, everything was different. It wasn't physical right away. It was in the way he looked at me a little longer, the way our conversations lingered in the dark, the way silence began to feel charged instead of empty. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the line between us blurred. I wish I could tell you it only happened once, that it was some fleeting mistake. But it wasn't. It became a pattern, a secret rhythm to our lives. Always quiet, always after the world had gone to sleep. We never said the words out loud, but we didn't need to. We both knew, and every morning we carried on as if nothing had changed. Coffee, small talk, chores. But inside I was unraveling. I stopped answering calls from friends. I couldn't look my mom in the eye. I felt like I was walking around with a secret scrawled across my forehead, invisible to everyone but me. At night, after he left my room, I'd stare at the ceiling and whisper to myself, "What am I doing? Who am I becoming?" Because here's the thing, it didn't feel like love. Not really. It felt like a lifeline, a desperate grasp at connection in a world that had left us both empty. But over time, even that lifeline began to feel like chains. I started journaling, writing things I couldn't say out loud. I hate myself. I want to stop. I feel hollow. I want someone to save me. The entries grew darker each night, my handwriting messier, my thoughts more tangled. And one night after he left, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The girl staring back looked tired, hollow, broken. She didn't look like someone living. She looked like someone waiting to be rescued. That's when I knew I couldn't keep going. I haven't told my mom. I don't know if I ever will. Days I dream of leaving, of packing a bag and starting over somewhere new. Other days I think about the nights of silence we shared, the nights I cried into his chest, the nights he whispered that he felt alive again. I wonder how you erase something like that. But what I do know is this: secrets don't stay quiet forever. They rot you from the inside out. This isn't a story about lust. It isn't about rebellion. It's about loneliness. About two broken people under the same roof, reaching for each other in the only way they knew how. Even if it blurred every line they should have protected. If you're listening to this, maybe you've carried something heavy too, okay? Maybe you've made mistakes that haunt you. Maybe you know what it feels like to be invisible. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. I just needed to finally say it out loud because silence was destroying me. I don't know what comes next. Maybe this confession is the beginning of the end, or maybe it's the beginning of healing. But I know one thing: I can't stay quiet anymore. And if you've ever been caught between what's right and what's real, I hope you find your way out before your guilt swallows you whole.